All right.
We're live.
Thursday, December 19th, this is a policy committee meeting in Menominee Falls, Village Hall, upper level conference room, 4344. Has the meeting been posted properly?
Yes, it has.
Did you get a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Yes.
Any-
No, it looks good, yeah.
I'll need a motion to approve the November 21st, 2024.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
So what we're gonna do first in the discussion item is, I'd like to move the 800 series discussion items, policy 830, 835, and 837 to the beginning, so we can allow Jason to do his presentation.
Okay.
Alrighty. Just wanna go ahead and go?
Yeah,
So we'll start
so
with the 830?
essentially I'll just do an overview a little bit, then I'll turn things over to Jason, because he
Sure.
has all the specifics in detail. Jason came to me, and this is something that was brought forward a few years ago. And for whatever reason, with the changing administrations and whatever, that these things were updated but not brought to committee. So it's important that these things get updated in the way that Jason and his team have looked at them, because there's been a lot of changes to community ed and rec, which is, obviously a department of the school district of Menominee Falls, but all of these things, that have been shared with me by Jason from C and Rec, our director over at C and Rec, I have not put any changes into them whatsoever, largely because, it's his realm, and he's gonna be able to explain kind of the detail of all this and kind of what's gonna be needed when we take this to action at the next policy meeting. So with that, I'll kind of pass it over. Is that about right?
That's about right.
All right,
I'll
there we
start
go.
with the first policy, 830. So as Mr. Munoz said, back in April 2022, the administration at the time had asked me to look at these policies. They're policies that have been in place for quite some time, just to do the annual review and revision of them. Reason I was asked to do that is our department oversees facility rentals and use of the facilities. So at that time, I just made my recommendations on the policy and the procedure. And as Mr. Munoz said, I'm just kind of bringing them forth again after several years, just to go through that approval process. So in policy 830 here, which is use of school facilities, the changes there are not very significant, it's just some wording changes. Really no major changes in that first policy. Wisconsin statute 120.13 just allows school boards to rent out school facilities to other groups. And so really, that's a pretty standard policy. Once again, no significant changes to that policy. But if there's any questions on that first one, I'm willing to.
So is it fair to say that the content really isn't changed at all?
The content has not changed at all
Okay.
of the policy.
Looks more like stylistic changes here.
Correct.
Just,
I think the questions in our meeting leading up to the meeting,
Yeah.
I think came from procedure
Yep.
830.
yes.
So why don't we jump to that with the understanding that it looks like if this is policy 830, that we're gonna have to list that here in policy somewhere. I don't believe that it is.
List.
It's gonna
Referring
be,
to the procedures.
usually we link
Oh, you
the
link the
we
procedure?
link the
Oh,
procedures
link it.
inside of the policy, right,
Sure.
Isabella? Yeah, that's our protocol now, is to, since this is attached to this policy, that whenever we get through final approval, that this will be linked inside of here as procedure 830 of policy 830. Alright, so
Okay.
little fine point, but okay, go ahead, sorry.
I will talk a little bit about the procedure 830 and then I understand there's some questions and I'm happy to answer those questions to the best of my ability. So what I did is I took the procedure 830 that was approved last, or revised in 2006. approved in 1994. I took it in 2022 and just looked at it and really just made changes to it based on what actual practice is of renting facilities. So there's some stylistic changes in there as well, but I'll kind of just go through the first part. Number 1 there just kind of outlines the priority of facility use. Nothing there has changed. School activities always get priority, community and rec affiliates, and so on. So nothing has changed there significantly. In number 2 there, it talks about use of equipment and technology. I kept a lot of the information in there, I gotta be honest. Most groups aren't using district technology, they're bringing their own technology. But I wanted to keep some of that information in there in the event that we would have a request to use that. Once again, no significant changes, just tells the users that they need to let us know if they need to access district technology. And then we work with technology services to see what we can do to make that happen. Then the following sections really, it just kind of breaks down the requirements for each of the different groups that might utilize facilities. So a lot of the information in sections 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, a lot of the information is the same, it's just categorized by how we classify facility use and how we charge for facility use. This has nothing to do with the actual fees, that's a separate approval by the board, but it just breaks it down by group. So once again, number 3, no significant changes. If you look at D there, what we did is we just made it so that the principal or his or her designee will ensure that all activities, so that's athletics, concerts, conferences, etc., are entered into the district's online facility calendar. That's just something that we want to make sure that's clear in policy and something that we've been working on with our team.
We have had some struggles in that area last year, but some improvements recently.
Yep.
When we monitored it, it's a program called ActiveNet. So that's not a public facing thing, you can't go and find really ActiveNet. That's more of us internally and how we schedule things. So there's a way for us to look, and that's something that Jason has been working on and making sure that I'm aware of how our buildings are putting things into the system.
What struggles were you talking about?
There was just some things that could have been done at a higher percentage. So if things aren't put into the system, like let's say, I'll just give an example. But let's say a basketball game that somebody forgot to put it in, and this is fictitious, I'm giving you an example. If somebody forgot to put in a basketball game and then somebody else books it, and there's 2 people that show up to use the same one site. So that's just things, that sort of thing, then we don't have heat or on and the doors aren't open, there's not custodial there. So there's a really good reason that that's in policy. I just wanted to reference it, we're aware of it, we're dialed into it from an efficiency perspective. We've had meetings about it, multiple meetings, and we'll continue to stay dialed in on it.
So
Alright.
that's been in use, ActiveNet has been in use for the past, how long?
ActiveNet's been in use for at least
Forever?
10 years now.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
okay,
That's kind of like the behind the scenes,
sure, they're scheduling.
how we all know like a commonness in a
Yeah.
district where community ed and rec is facilitating and organizing and calendaring events that are occurring in many of our district buildings. And that's an important understanding, is that community ed and rec has a facility, but they're actively using our pools all the time, which are in the high school and in at North. And there's swimming lessons, and that's just an example, it's a good example, but there's other examples, all the gyms that are being used. So all that scheduling, it's not like it can all be centered through the building of CE and rec. It actually has to be, we have moving parts in all of our buildings. And we're about to expand that to another gym as well. So that ActiveNet piece and that piece of policy, that's actually a really important piece.
And a few years ago, Well, first of all, ActiveNet is also the system that we use for rec program registration,
That's right.
and then it ties into that
Oh,
facility
okay.
reservation piece and facility scheduling. But I'm gonna say 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, Community and Rec really took over ownership and management of facility use. It used to be directly under the umbrella of business services. So I work closely with that team and Caitlin and so on. But it just made more sense for Community and Rec to take over it because we utilize a lot of facilities. And a lot of the groups that utilize the facilities are your Junior Phoenix groups and your affiliate groups of rec. So that's just a little bit of history and background on that.
Yeah, and Jason has talked to me about our new athletic director, and his work has been very high level, getting a lot of things in there. I mean, there's a lot of work back and forth. I mean, he's scheduling and rescheduling things all the time, so high praise in that department, and it's something we're just gonna keep watching. Cause the more efficiency and the more everything is in that system, cause sometimes things pop up. Like you have to schedule an event that's not on the books, and that happens, right? That being said, the sooner we know about everything, the better it is for our community partners and who we want using our facilities at night and.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I think we're at
You're-
8:35 now,
Yep.
right?
Yep, are there questions on 8:30?
No.
The only thing I just wanted to add is we added that school district partners.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
So number 6, so when I say partners, I guess there's probably not necessarily a formalized partnership agreement, but I'm thinking of groups like your Booster Club, your Optimist Club, your Community League, your PTOs, your Scout troops, things that are tied to the schools but aren't necessarily their own organization.
Yeah.
And so we just created a separate section or category for them because those groups, there's some special circumstances with that. So if that's okay, I'll go on to 8:35. One thing to note, when we do finalize these policies and procedures, we should take off, like on that first policy, it says revised in April of 2022. It really never was revised in April of 2022. That is when I made these recommendations, but it never made it to this level.
Yeah, and if you look back at 8:30, I had Isabella put in revised December 19th, cause that's what we're doing right now, but then the next policy meeting will approve it here, and then that'll go to the board and consent agenda.
So out of curiosity, because I was actually on policy in 2022.
Mhm. You've never seen it.
I have
Me
not
too.
seen it,
I
so
know you
where did it die at? I'm just curious. I have to ask.
Or it just wasn't prioritized to come to
I
the committee?
gave it to the individuals who were running policy at that time, and
We're happy to take care of it now,
there was a
and
transition, and I think it just never made it.
we're happy to take care of it now, and by the next policy committee
Just
meeting,
curious.
by the end of January, this will be updated policy in the system, because it will have gone through consent agenda by then, so. So policy 835,
Policy 835,
I
use of
think
community
this is the
centers.
one where you had questions, because you wrapped procedure into the policy.
Well,
Isn't this the one
That's what I
where,
was questioning.
I
so
didn't, I
that's
took the procedure out, cause
So-
whoever originally wrote this
so procedure 835, it says is now included in the policy.
in the policy, yes,
So your recommendation is to delete the
Oh,
procedure.
Yep, because the procedure for use of the community center is the same as the use of any other facility in the district.
Got it.
This policy 835, this was originally written at the time that the community center was created, and it was a joint venture between the village and the district. So there's some language in here about priority of use of the space, whether the village gets priority or the district gets priority. There's some references to the rec commission in here. Well, the rec commission doesn't exist anymore. And we as a district now have complete ownership, management, and control of the community center. So we took a lot of those pieces out of here, is really what that does. In theory, and this is a decision, I guess, that the board can make. In theory, I'm not even sure if we need the separate policy for use of the community center, because it's a district property like any other property. But if we wanna keep it a separate policy just because it's unique, I would just recommend we take out a lot of this information and simplify it.
I think that keeping 835 and is the prudent thing to do, given that in this area, rec departments or community eds and rec like we have, it's more common to have them attached to school districts. But if you look at the whole state, it's not. So I think it is important that we keep this in here, you know, that because it is a standalone policy, but we can always tweak it too, once we get it dialed down and approved. Because
But
we're
if
now,
the district owns it,
we do,
or wouldn't it be considered as district facility?
yeah, yes. We're just in
So-
that transitional phase with the building. And all of the legal documents have changed hands, I mean, we're literally in the month and the board is gonna actually be reviewing that, you don't know this yet, I think I've alluded to it, but all the bids are in for this expansion and technically the village and the school district have jointly owned community ed and rec until right about right now. I've signed it over, that's all been done with all the lawyers, but that was one of the complicating factors in us getting this built.
And just this is a minute detail, the village and the district jointly owned the land,
Correct.
not necessarily the building,
Building,
the land. Just,
We jointly own the land until the end of this month,
okay.
and then next month, we fully own the land. And the building.
So that's why I was just saying, just throwing it out there, like if you have subsets for in the policy, I think you,
I'd rather get through the January meeting where we look at bids and we actually see all the notarized documents that I've already signed on behalf of the school district with land transfers. I think it's good to wait at least a month.
so what I would rather do than let's just table this one, because what I think would be a good idea is putting it all in 830 and then having a subset down here for community center. Because I think that would then, you know,
It's all in one spot.
all in one,
subset.
people understand now the district owns the community center, because it's on in one policy. So would that make sense then, for us to kind of table that until it's done and then change and then just put it all in one file? I'm about like streamlining,
Well, I think we can come back to the next meeting with it.
Sure.
yeah,
The documents have all changed hands.
Yeah.
You know, we're just in that zone where taking
This is just-
possession has to do with the bids.
right,
You
so
know.
just for clarity, so what I'm hearing you say, I believe, is we probably can take this information that's in policy 835,
yes,
which, and probably incorporate that into the procedure of 830,
you could do that.
probably.
That's what I heard too.
Yeah.
I mean, you said policy, but the policy itself is really just, policy 830 is looking at very broad strokes, it references 120.13 sub 17. The procedure itself is what you were referencing, which broke down each of the areas.
Correct, but I
Okay.
mean, or you can, to make it even more obvious, is say something in here in policy 830, like
We could do that too.
community center
Yep.
in here. That's where another question I was gonna say is when you say school district partners, i.e., should we put like examples, Booster, Optimus, in there in the procedure? So then people would know, the partners. Sure. Again, I'm just throwing it out there. Cause I think that
Maybe
gives
just
people
spell it out a little bit.
examples of who we would consider as a partner. Like how you just noted that, like Optimus, Booster, whoever's gonna use it, just as like examples. I think that would be more helpful for people to understand who the community partners are. And then eventually we're going to, let's just table the 835 then?
Well, we don't wanna
We're gonna
table it, cause if we put it on
bring
the
it to
table, we can't,
meeting.
yeah, let's,
Okay, so,
this is discussion,
okay,
so
oh
instead
yeah, I
of,
forget, I keep
'cause-
thinking it was gonna be action today too.
yeah, no action, so we're not set for action, so
So,
if it's just discussion, we'll come to the next meeting with re-prepared documents
Mhm.
based on this discussion. So we've had a discussion about how we're gonna rearrange some of these things. We'll come back with discussion and action to see what you think about how we've rearranged them. So once we look at it, like I think we've taken enough feedback where we can kinda go, alright,
Mhm.
let's get rid of 835, we'll delete it now, but then pull things in that melded way and we bring it back. You don't have to action it and approve it, but we can certainly discuss it and then put it on action if you think it's good,
yeah,
or if you wanna make adjustments for action.
I think we can probably do that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fair,
I think
this is
so.
benign,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I
I
do,
think that would be, would that make sense?
it does.
I'm good with that.
Alright,
Okay, that's,
let's move to,
And then just real quick, this procedure,
837.
835 that was in here,
oh, right,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that was something that was created at the time the community center was there. And I know there was a lot of turnover in community and rec directors and things like that. So it just gave the Riverside principal the ultimate responsibility of what goes in the community center. Well, that hasn't, I mean, Scott Walter has not been involved in that ever that I know of, so.
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll delete that.
And then the last thing is just policy 837, once again, it's just, there's no changes recommended to this. It just talks about what vehicles are allowed to be parked in the community center. Once again, this is one of those policies where I don't know the history behind
Yeah.
why it was written. We don't
Yeah.
have policies like this for our other,
I was wondering
Buildings
why
that I'm aware of?
it's
unless you have a
I mean,
different
it's
idea.
Yeah, my only thought is because this is, the community ed and rec is open to not just students, but the community in general. So, in other words, the parking isn't restricted by school law. It's very much a gray area, so, and let me just explain, American Public School law, during the school day, the parking lot is an extension of the school.
Mhm.
That isn't the case with community ed and rec. Alright, so the
Okay.
parking lot is just like a school bus. If the school bus is driving, 5 miles away from, or even in another county, it's an extension of the school district, the students on the bus. The same thing with our parking lots. Now, community ed and rec is school district property, but I think there's a strong argument, especially with Fund 80 and community service funds, that it isn't a school parking lot.
So is this more for
We have certain authorities on,
employees? Oh,
we have certain authorities on school property that we don't have on, for example, village property.
Yeah.
Or the village parking lot.
So then is it good to keep this
I
policy,
think
just so that we
it's
keep that
I think it's good,
distinction?
we need to keep the distinction, we might even need a procedure to expand on that a little bit. Cause when you bring drug dogs in, I'll just use an example.
Okay.
Cause we do drug dogs in the district, as a reasonable safety precaution. Once or twice a year, we bring drug dogs in. Do we bring drug dogs to the community ed and rec? We don't. There's really good reason that we don't, that those aren't students, those aren't school personnel per se. It's not even paid for through Fund 10. So American Public School law is pretty clear that a search by a drug dog it happens all the time, right? We do it. We've done it once this year, I think, for sure, at least once. That would be why this needs to be maintained, maybe even expanded on, but at least maintained. That to understand that there's a separation between school and an organization which runs under the school district, but is doing so for the community writ large.
so what per se would you put in the policy, procedure?
I'd have to look at and check with legal a little bit on it,
Okay.
because my mind goes through something like that. Like if something happens on the parking lot at CE and Rec.
Oh, okay.
What type of law applies? Is it American Public School law? Or is it just,
Protocol. Okay.
regular police? You know, that's an important distinction.
Okay.
So when I saw this, I think it's one of the more important ones, even though it appears benign. The example that I just gave is accurate.
Yeah.
That if, you
Okay,
know, there's certain laws, like principals have certain authority under American public school law. Administrators, principals, people that have been trained in a certain way about discipline and parking and these sorts of things. So it's an important distinction. I would need some legal clarity about it.
okay.
So,
Okay.
That's fine, I'll just follow the signs when I park.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
there's
thank
gonna be
you.
some different signs,
There's
Or I'll
some
park on
different
the
signs.
street.
starting in April.
Okay.
Any
Alright,
other
thank you.
questions about?
So next item, so January, these
Next-
will come back
Next meeting, these will all come back
and we'll put it to discussion,
and
action,
action.
and then,
Then they'll go to the last meeting in January for consent agenda for approval.
yeah.
And ironically, the last meeting in January, at least at this point, we're set to come with the bids for the board for final approval of the project and the bids.
And this is already in practice anyways, we're just kind of solidifying
Yes.
it. Okay,
Yep.
all right, then there's no rush. Okay.
Alright,
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you so much, Jason.
thank you and thanks for
Thank you.
rearranging.
Yeah, not a problem.
Thanks for coming out in the snow.
No
Yeah.
problem.
It's slushy.
It's pretty,
I'm indoors.
Yeah, it doesn't seem,
That's what we're out.
it was a little slushy.
was it?
Yeah.
Alright, well, I have 2 more events at the high school and I know they're going on,
Oh, boy.
All right,
both of them.
so we will now
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
give it back, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We'll pivot back to the 100s. So these should be easy, policy 110, district mission.
Yep, this is new. So this is a first reading of a new policy. This is a boilerplate template for the PRG, which is one of 2 organizations that, you got it? So the only changes to the boilerplate template is the school board of the school district of Menominee Falls. So the part that's underlined was the only addition, plus the next part that's underlined where I put in the 24-29 strategic plan confirms the vision and mission of the relentless pursuit of excellence, one person at a time, while remaining committed to engagement, learning, and improvement, which is all over our strategic plan. So this is a policy that doesn't exist for the district right now that we have to have. It's a core based policy. Cross-reference will be a new policy, 112.1, which we'll get to in a second, which is about strategic planning. And then also an existing policy, 113, about district philosophy. So any
Pretty
questions?
straight- no,
Yeah.
straightforward.
I like it, it's concise, to the point.
Now, old 111 should be in your packet next, listed as goals. This is gonna be a policy that exists right now, it does not exist in PRG, and it's essentially gonna be wrapped into many of the policies we're talking about. So it'll exist, but at some point, the recommendation is meeting at the next meeting, because this isn't up for action, is it? No. This is discussion only on 111, so that'll come to the next meeting, because all of these things are gonna, you can see it says strategic goals and all these sorts of things. That'll be wrapped into mission and strategic plan, plus 120 and 130, which we'll get to in a second.
Which essentially means that we're just gonna eventually remove it.
Yes, 100%.
We're just gonna-
It'll be fully removed, it's not a policy that really exists out there, but there are things in it that we're putting into mission and strategic planning. So jumping to 112.1, I'm gonna pull your eyes right to the bottom of that one real quick, where you'll see references to state statutes about board power for reasonable cause of education, the statutory construction of board powers and duties. Strategic planning is something that we have already conducted this year. Usually there's policy around it. And cross-referencing new policy 110 and existing policy 113 district philosophy. So this is boilerplate language from PRG that talks about strategic planning. And it's important, and in a couple of the, I'm not gonna read it word for word, but essentially this talks about the vision and the mission, long-term goals, the responsibility of district administrators, strategic planning team members, which I did. So this kind of walks through things that have already occurred, but there'll be another strategic plan in 2029, because the one right now is 24 to 29. This talks about data and reporting back to the board, which has already been set in place. So, but I think it's important for future boards to have this locked in. That strategic planning is how, we move things forward as a district.
Just out of curiosity, this is a 112.1.
Yes.
What do we have that is 112? Like what policy is it that's showing 112 in there?
I think we, Yeah.
I was gonna check and I forgot. I was just curious what our 112.
yeah, I didn't bring my computer.
Our 112 is non-discrimination.
Oh. So how is that under 112.1? Like how?
It's just a boilerplate
Oh, okay, so
percentage.
my question is should it be numbered differently? That's what my question is.
No,
because-
this is numbering from the state. So strategic planning fits in the 100, it has to do with school board authority. It'll make more sense once you see the rest of them, like 120 and 130. 120 has to do with the legal status of the district. 130 has the legal status of the school board. So these are
Okay,
2 meetings ago, I talked about a policy 184 and having to break that out. We're doing that right now.
Right.
Right, I don't have 184 listed, but 120 and 130 and the mission and strategic plan, it's really important for us to start whittling down at a 184 that really should be about board minutes. That's what policy 184 should be about.
okay,
We're gonna eventually get to that, but before I can get to that, I have to break out mission, strategic plan, the powers, the legal powers and authority of the district and the board, which it was all kinda thrown into one policy, and it really should be specifically
so I'm
broken.
wondering if our actual 112 now should be renumbered something else, is that?
Pro-
That's what I'm trying to get at is
Yeah,
like
we'll-
that doesn't have any affiliation
We'll be
with it.
coming to that, but not in the short
Okay.
term.
So we'll leave the 112, then .1, and then eventually with our actual 112, it may be renumbered something else.
Well, I'll double check PRG, but I'm pretty confident the PRG numbering is 112.1 for that. So that is what that is, and district philosophy, it actually stays the same except for one strikeout. So this is a minor adjustment, but it kind of goes with what we're talking about. Like I said, once the Jasons, it's good that we put those up front because they're really not connected. They're important, but not connected to this, why the rest of these documents are really here. So that you got the mission, you have strategic plan, now you have district philosophy. You can see engage, learn, improve, relentless pursuit of excellence. What we needed to do was take out the old strategic plan, you can see that on the bottom. And then you can see the next document, thank you Isabella, put in the new strategic plan. That's the only difference.
I like the end date on that too, or the year range.
Yep. Absolutely. So to have a district philosophy with a linked strategic plan was very good in the past, but not having a strategic planning policy was something that needed to be put in place. Good to have it, it was good
Yeah.
that previous boards and administrations put in a linked strategic plan. It wasn't good that there wasn't a policy that said we are about strategic plans as a district.
Okay.
But we're correcting that. Like I said, these are all connected in very direct ways, just like these next couple. And I'll be as clear as possible with these, because essentially what we're doing is there's 3 policies in front of you that are gonna become 2 policies. So 3 policies in front of you are gonna become 2 policies. So the 3 policies are in front of you are 120, 121, and 130. So essentially, policy 120, which looks like this, from the PRG, Policy Resource Guide, which was Wisconsin Association of School Boards. Policy 120 is the legal status of the school district. We have it misnumbered as 121. So really, all I have done is I'm recommending that 121 be deleted, which is why it's X'd out. So you can actually see the exact words that I took from 121, and I just put them in the boilerplate language for PRG. The exact words, which are important actually because they're legal words. So 121 is gonna become 120, and I copied the words, these exact words, which are the legal and official name of the school district, and you may not know this, is the School District of Menominee Falls, comma, Joint School District Number 1, comma, Villages of Menominee Falls, comma, Butler, comma, and Lanett. Now, we call it the School District of Menominee Falls because it's just easier. But the legal name is what I just listed and what's in there. But you know that because it's already in policy here.
Right.
Okay? So I just pulled it over, and what I like about PRG is they list the Wisconsin Constitution under chapters 115 and 121, which is important to mention and is not mentioned in the existing policy. So that you have, I mean, it's good to reference the Wisconsin Constitution and the chapters in that Constitution. Then I copy word for word that we are a common school district. So there's many different, there's unified, there's unions, we're a common school district, and then how we're organized is listed there. So you'll note when you look at the old policy that struck out, I just took it word for word and put in that we're a common district, and here it is. And then the last part, and then we're done with this one, in addition to the public school grades operated, the district, and this is a critical part, the district operates such other programs and conducts such other activities as may be required by applicable law. And the district may further operate other programs and activities to the extent permitted by the applicable law. So as you look at those 4 different grades, it's pretty boilerplate and scripted. But there's things like virtual school. There's things like off-site programming. Just a couple examples. And that's what that last paragraph gives authority for. Then it lists all the statutes, which is outstanding, the powers of the district. And then it references the school board's legal status, which we're getting to next. Questions?
Renumbering.
Basically, but there are some word changes that are very important to the district. Old policy 130 is mislabeled. It says operation of the district. Although when you read the words, it talks about the Constitution in Wisconsin. So there's some words in here that are correct, but policy 130 should be about the legal status of the school board as a whole, which is here. So 130, because of all these other policies that are new, 130 existing is gonna go away, but PRG 130 establishes school board as the legal status. And then it lists the name of the school board the way we call it, and that it's comprised of 7 school board members. And then it gets into the state law and then specifics, and I'll just read one part of this, that a school board action that is within the comprehensive meaning of the terms of the duties and the powers if the action is not prohibited by laws of the federal government or by the laws of the state. Further, one of the express statutory powers of the board is the power to do all things reasonable to promote the cause of education. And that last sentence is right out of statutes, and it's important that it's in there. We don't have it anywhere in our existing policies. So that sort of thing, and why do I know that it's there? It's all listed in the legal references. How the school board is defined, the statutory duties and powers under 118.01, and then chapter 120s, all referenced there. So I do reference the new policy 120, school district legal status. So, like I said, a lot of these, not the 800s, that's all CE and REC and facility use. But all these other ones, they're all actually very connected and important to be done together. questions? Alright, so almost there. Moving right along. And are we to action yet? No, not yet.
You,
Two more.
the 130 and then 400.
Yep.
Or 457.
Yep, got it. So 130.1. So this is just to review. 130.1. So now that we have the correct, we're going to have this, the correct 130. Our 130.1 makes more sense. Alright, the Board of Education is the governing body. So it makes more sense now that you have 130, that's where 130.1 comes from. It derives its power from the Constitution. Legal authority is granted only to the board as a whole. So that's an important piece. Not any individual or any subset of the board that isn't the board majority. Individually, the member has no legal authority except that which is explicitly delegated by an official action of the board. And when it says the board, it means the majority of the board. So this is an important 130.1. But it makes more sense now that we're gonna have this, okay? So this is just a review, no changes. It's just gonna be a review document. In Mr. Halverson's Student Services Committee with Board Member Wren, they came into a policy, actually several, so they're working a lot of school safety pieces, which will be coming next month. But in the interim, they were working on a new policy 457, which Mr. Halverson has worked out of PRG listed here. So we currently do not have a policy like this, and we should have it. In our district, so
I'm surprised.
yeah. And it was one of the recommendations that came out of the safety review and when they were looking at everything. So Mr. Halverson has looked over this and made some minor adjustments from boilerplate that's specific to here. Meaning this talks about where our annual notices are listed, the assignment of responsibilities, the Director of Student Support Services. So you can see that those sorts of things have been put in there. But licensed treatment professionals, DPI suicide prevention resources, these are all things that falls under the new position, Director of Student Support Services. So this has been updated in that regard, and this is a first reading. So if you have any questions now or they come up by the next meeting,
Okay.
This is something that in Board Member Wren's committee and they're doing a lot of good work there. They're punching through a lot of things. Next thing that they're working on is obviously a school safety plan review. So that'll be coming before the board as a whole, actually in closed session in January. Ironically, we were working on that as a team the morning of the 16th. So they were finalizing it with all of the principal teams. And once we heard about the events in Madison, we got everybody back to their buildings. But that is good work that's attached to this, and that's going really well.
That goes along with this.
It does. It actually does.
This goes along with that?
That'll be for January.
Oh, gotcha.
So there's a new crisis plan and a safety plan that essentially comes before the board, but then the chief of police and after the
Right.
board reviews it, they review it along with the fire chief and others, other agencies that we're probably gonna have working with us as well. So it's a darn good document, a lot of work by a lot of people, including Isabella here, but also Mr. Halverson, but also all the principals as well. So we're in a good spot, but there's always more that we can do with school safety.
Yes. For policy 457, student suicide prevention and
Yes.
intervention. I think it looks comprehensive, it's direct, and I like it.
Yeah,
So I
it's,
don't really have any questions or.
yeah, Mr. Halverson, he's put a lot of time into.
Because I know they do it, I know they work on that.
Yeah,
in the schools,
absolutely.
But we need to
Have a policy?
Yeah.
For sure.
encompass it,
I'm
yeah.
just surprised we did.
Yeah, Mr. Halverson, Dan was doing a review and it came up and he had sent it over and
Yeah.
and
Well, that's why we have WASB, you know,
Yeah.
or PRG, because, you know, maybe it wasn't always a policy, but then it came one and, you know, to stay current with.
yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like, you're right, it is relatively, looks like 2021.
Yeah.
So it looks like
That's
2020,
good, we caught it.
it looks like 2021 it templated in.
Good, good.
Mhm.
Okay, alright. Action.
I think we're
Oh.
at action now.
Okay. Alright, so action
Okay,
item
this
113, district philosophy.
I'll make a motion.
I will second. Any other last minute comments?
No.
About that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion pass. And next is policy 120. So I need a motion to approve policy 120 as presented.
I'll make a motion to pass policy one, was it 121?
120.
Oh, I'm sorry, 120.
Last minute comments?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And thank you, and the reason we're going in the order, it's in numerical order. So the policy you just approved at the committee level, that a voted consent agenda, the next policy, 121, is essentially pushed into 120, they're the same.
So
There's-
actually then, this is the one when we were having the discussion that I'm just gonna make a motion to then actually remove
Correct,
policy 121.
that is correct, that is the next,
So that's the next action is to remove it. Because it's already being replaced by 120.
it's a misnumbering.
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Oh,
second.
Or did you make the motion?
I mean,
Oh, I'll second it then. I'll
Two
second
of
it.
us.
Yeah, I know, I'm so confused.
all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, and you could note that if you put these together,
Yeah, they're
they're
identical.
they're identical.
And the reason why we split it, just so then it's just clear of what we were doing.
Yep.
with the-
They're identical, it's really a renumbering with minor additions from
I
PRG,
just wanna officially remove it
correct.
and have a vote for that. And the next is policy 130, school board legal status. I'll need a motion to approve policy 130.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Any questions, comments? No? Alright, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. And next is policy 130.1, Board of Education as a governing body. I'll need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Policy 131.1, I will second.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And there were no changes to that.
These are
Mhm.
straightforward.
They were straightforward reviews, I just wanted to make sure that we had eyes on it.
And then the next one is the policy 424, where Mr. Gebauer made that presentation,
Oh, yeah.
the participation of non-public school.
And he was adamant that he could come if we wanted him to, but given the weather and his
Busy.
family busyness, I did tell him it was not necessary.
And we didn't have, if we did, we would have asked you.
What was asked for the last time was the strikeout version, which we have here for you.
Yep.
But we are recommending making these changes.
Very straightforward. So I'll need a motion to approve policy 424 as presented.
I'll make a motion.
I will second. Any comments?
No.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, last agenda item, policy 424 has been approved.
And I do appreciate Mr. Gebauer's work, it was more,
Yeah.
it was not just Mr. Gebauer, he was working on his practicum for the superintendency, but he also involved quite a few other staff in the building in order to make sure that we had the most up-to-date 424 as possible.
Well, technically, you said it's already in practice, but now we're just making it official.
Yeah, I mean, and also we were switching to a PRG base.
Yeah.
So he was switching to a PRG based policy, which was good for him to see, and he involved a lot of people in that process, which was really good.
And we already have our agenda items, unless you have anything that you'd like to. I think we already have the other ones already lined up.
We do, we're lined up for our next
So-
meeting. I think our next meeting's already scheduled.
Is there?
I'll make a motion.
I will second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?